Lakeside High buzzed with energy as the fall semester kicked off, and Tyler Cooper was at the center of it all. At 19, he wasn't just a football player. He was the football player. Every move he made on the field was electric. Every glance from his piercing blue eyes caused hearts to flutter. His blonde hair often looked like he'd just stepped out of a photo shoot, and his broad shoulders and defined arms gave him a presence that couldn't be ignored. Yet, beneath the layers of confidence, Tyler carried a hidden weight that no one could see, a void he couldn't quite name. To everyone else, he was living the dream, but Tyler often felt like he was playing a role. It was an ordinary Monday when something extraordinary happened. After practice, Tyler trudged into the locker room, sweat dripping from his forehead as he pulled off his jersey. Tossing it onto the bench, he noticed something unusual. A crisp white envelope tucked into the corner of his locker. Frowning, he reached for it, his fingers brushing against the smooth paper. The handwriting was elegant but unfamiliar, and curiosity sparked in his chest. He glanced around to ensure none of his teammates were watching, then tore the envelope open. Inside, a single sentence was scrawled on fine stationery. "You're more than just a star. You're everything I admire." Tyler's brow furrowed as he read the words again. A secret admirer? His immediate thought was that it must have been a joke. Some of the guys on the team were notorious pranksters, and this seemed like their kind of humor. Yet, the note didn't have the crudeness he'd expect from a joke. There was no punchline, no vulgarity, just sincerity. For a moment, Tyler's heart raced, but he quickly stuffed the note into his gym bag and shut the locker. He wasn't ready to think too hard about it. The following day, another note appeared, this time with a small gift. A leather bracelet that matched Tyler's casual but stylish wardrobe. This time, he felt a strange warmth bloom in his chest. The words on the note read, "For the man who shines brightest on and off the field." Tyler couldn't help but smile as he turned the bracelet in his hands. It was simple, but thoughtful, and he found himself slipping it onto his wrist without a second thought. His teammates hollered and joked around him, oblivious to the growing mystery that now consumed Tyler's mind. By the end of the week, Tyler had received 5 notes and 2 small gifts. Each one felt more personal than the last. One of the notes described how his leadership on the field inspired those around him, while another complimented his humility, something Tyler didn't think many people noticed. The admirer clearly knew him, but Tyler had no idea who it could be. Was it one of the girls who always flocked to his games? Or maybe someone from his classes? The anonymity was maddening, but also thrilling. The notes became Tyler's secret obsession. He found himself looking forward to opening his locker after practice, his heart pounding in anticipation. The attention felt different, more intimate than the usual praise he received from fans and peers. It wasn't about his looks or popularity. It was about him. For someone who spent so much time being idolized from a distance, the personal nature of the messages felt almost intoxicating. One evening, as the sun set and the team finished a grueling practice, Tyler lingered in the locker room longer than usual. His teammates gradually filtered out, their voices fading into the distance. Tyler stood alone, staring at his locker. What would he find this time? As he opened the door, his breath caught. Inside was a small key attached to a note. The handwriting was unmistakable, and the message was short but clear. "If you want to know who I am, stay here after the game tomorrow. I'll reveal myself." Tyler's pulse quickened as he held the key in his hand. Who was behind this? The thought of finally uncovering the truth was both exciting and terrifying. His mind raced with possibilities, each more thrilling than the last. For a fleeting moment, he wondered if he was ready to face the answer. But deep down, he knew he couldn't walk away from this mystery. Whoever it was, they'd managed to reach a part of him he hadn't realized was longing to be seen. The cliffhanger. Tyler clenched the key tightly as he glanced around the empty locker room. He made his decision. Tomorrow night, after the game, he would stay. And whoever walked through that door would finally have to face him. Friday night brought a charged atmosphere to Lakeside High. The bleachers were packed, the crowd roaring with excitement as the football team took the field. Tyler Cooper was in his element, commanding the game with precision and charisma. Every pass, every tackle, every touchdown seemed effortless, as though the field was his stage and he was the lead actor. But tonight, Tyler's focus wasn't just on winning. His mind lingered on the key in his locker and the promise of finally meeting his admirer. As the final whistle blew and the team claimed victory, Tyler basked in the cheers of his teammates and the adoration of the crowd. Yet, as they slapped his back and celebrated, he felt a strange sense of detachment. His thoughts were already in the locker room, where he planned to uncover the identity of the person who had so meticulously captured his attention. Excusing himself quickly, Tyler slipped away, weaving through the jubilant throng of fans and players. The locker room was silent when he entered, the usual raucous energy absent. He took a deep breath, the cool air brushing against his skin as he moved toward his locker. For a moment, he hesitated. What if this was all a joke? What if no one showed up? Shaking off his doubts, he opened his locker and retrieved the key. The small silver object felt heavier in his hand tonight, its significance looming larger than he'd anticipated. Tyler scanned the room, his heart thudding against his rib cage. He decided to sit on the bench in the far corner where he had a clear view of the entrance. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second stretching into what felt like an eternity. He shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy he couldn't quite suppress. He was used to being in control, but tonight he felt like a spectator in his own life. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway, and Tyler's breath hitched. He leaned forward, his muscles tensing as the door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, tall and broad-shouldered, the dim light casting shadows that obscured his face. Tyler squinted, his pulse racing as the man moved closer. When the light caught his features, Tyler froze. It was Coach Daniels. Tyler's mind reeled. Of all the possibilities he'd considered, his coach had never been one of them. Daniels was in his mid-30s, with a commanding presence that demanded respect. His dark hair was always neatly styled, and his athletic build hinted at a man who practiced what he preached. Tyler had always admired him, but now, as the truth settled in, that admiration morphed into something else entirely. "Coach," Tyler's voice was low, almost a whisper, as he stood. "It's you?" Daniels hesitated, his usual composure faltering. "Tyler," he began, his voice steady but tinged with nerves. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this, but I couldn't keep it in anymore." He looked away, as if afraid to meet Tyler's eyes. Tyler took a step forward, his confusion giving way to something deeper, something he'd buried for a long time. "So, all those notes, the gifts, that was you?" He wasn't angry. Instead, he felt a strange sense of relief. The pieces were falling into place, and they fit more perfectly than he could have imagined. Daniels nodded, his expression vulnerable in a way Tyler had never seen before. "I know it was wrong," he admitted. "You're my student, and I'm your coach, but I couldn't help it. You're..." He trailed off, his voice breaking slightly. "You're everything I admire." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of the confession hanging between them. Then, to Daniel's surprise, Tyler closed the distance between them, his blue eyes locking onto his coach's. "You've been driving me crazy," Tyler murmured, his tone low and charged with emotion. "All this time, I've been wondering who you were. And now that I know," he smirked, his confidence returning, "you're not getting away without giving me what I've been waiting for." Daniel's breath hitched as Tyler's hand reached up to rest on his shoulder. For a moment, the older man seemed torn, his professionalism clashing with his desires. But when Tyler leaned in, their lips met in a kiss that was both hesitant and electrifying. It was a release of tension that had been building for weeks, and neither of them wanted to let go. The cliffhanger, as their kiss deepened, the sound of a door creaking open interrupted them. Tyler and Daniels froze, their eyes darting toward the entrance. Someone was there, but the shadowy figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. A cold wave of fear washed over them. Had they just been seen? The locker room was eerily quiet after the sound of the door creaking shut. Tyler and Coach Daniels stood frozen, their breaths caught in their throats as they stared at the empty doorway. The kiss they had shared moments ago still lingered in the air, its intensity overshadowed by the dread of being caught. Tyler's heart pounded, the adrenaline from their stolen moment mixing with the fear of exposure. For the first time that night, he felt the weight of the risk they were taking. Coach Daniels was the first to move, his hand running through his neatly combed hair as he paced the length of the room. "This can't happen again," he said abruptly, his voice firm but strained. His dark eyes darted toward Tyler as though searching for an agreement. "If someone saw us..." "No one saw anything," Tyler interrupted, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. He stepped closer, his confidence returning. "Whoever it was, they didn't stick around. They didn't see enough to know what was going on." Daniel shook his head, his jaw tightening. "You don't know that? If anyone finds out..." He trailed off, his expression a mix of fear and regret. "This isn't just about us, Tyler. My career, your future, everything could be destroyed." Tyler crossed his arms, leaning casually against the lockers as if to diffuse the tension. "Then we make sure no one finds out," he said simply, his blue eyes locking onto Daniel's. "Look, I get it. This is complicated, but don't act like you don't want this as much as I do." Daniel stopped pacing, his broad shoulders sagging slightly as he sighed. "Of course I want this," he admitted, his voice barely above a murmur. "You have no idea how hard it's been to keep my distance, but that doesn't mean it's right." Tyler smirked, his confidence now fully restored. He took a step closer, closing the gap between them. "What's so wrong about two people wanting each other?" he asked, his tone playful, but with an underlying seriousness. "You think I don't know what I want? I've been waiting for this, for you, for weeks now." Daniels looked at him, his defenses crumbling under the intensity of Tyler's gaze. The coach had spent years building a life of discipline and control, but Tyler was a force he couldn't resist. Still, the risks loomed large in his mind. "We'd have to be careful," he said finally, his voice soft but resolute. "No one can know. Not your teammates, not your friends. No one." Tyler nodded, his expression serious. Agreed. This stays between us. He stepped even closer, his hand brushing against Daniel's. But you better be ready to keep up with me, Coach. Because now that I know how you feel, I'm not letting you back out. For the rest of the evening, the two stayed in the locker room, talking in hushed tones and exchanging fleeting touches that only deepened the bond forming between them. Tyler had always been used to getting what he wanted, but this felt different. It wasn't just about desire, it was about connection. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly seen. As the hours ticked by, they finally parted ways, each slipping out of the locker room under the cover of darkness. Tyler returned home, his mind racing with the events of the night. He replayed every moment from the kiss to the pact they had made. It was reckless, sure, but it was also exhilarating. He couldn't wait for their next meeting. The cliffhanger. That night, as Tyler lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from an unknown number. I know your secret. Meet me at the bleachers tomorrow after practice, or everyone else will know it too. The next day at school, Tyler couldn't focus. Every class felt like a blur as his mind replayed the text message over and over. I know your secret. The words were simple, but their weight was suffocating. Whoever sent that message knew about him and Coach Daniels. The question was, how much did they know? And how far were they willing to go? By the time practice rolled around, Tyler was on edge. His usual charisma was replaced by a quiet tension that even his teammates noticed. You good, man? One of them asked as they lined up for drills. Tyler forced a grin and shrugged. Yeah, just didn't sleep well. He lied, keeping his tone casual. But inside, his stomach churned. Coach Daniels wasn't helping his nerves either. The coach avoided Tyler's gaze throughout practice, his usual encouragement replaced by a distant professionalism. It was clear that Daniels was just as shaken, but Tyler couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had a meeting to prepare for, one that could make or break everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the football field, Tyler made his way to the bleachers. The air was cool, and the faint smell of freshly cut grass lingered. His heart pounded as he approached the designated spot, his eyes scanning for any sign of the mysterious messenger. Underneath the bleachers, the space was dimly lit, with just enough light filtering through to make out shapes. Glad you showed up, a voice said from the shadows. Tyler's head snapped toward the sound and his chest tightened. Out stepped Mason, one of his teammates. Mason was a wiry kid with a sharp tongue and an even sharper eye for gossip. He was the last person Tyler wanted holding any kind of leverage over him. Mason? Tyler asked, his voice a mix of surprise and irritation. What the hell is this? Mason smirked, his arms crossed as he leaned against one of the metal beams. Relax, golden boy, he said, his tone dripping with smugness. I'm not here to ruin your life yet. Tyler clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. What do you want? He asked, cutting straight to the point. He didn't have the patience for Mason's games. Oh, it's simple, Mason replied, stepping closer. You and Coach Daniels have something going on, don't you? He paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. When Tyler didn't respond, Mason's grin widened. Don't bother denying it. I saw you two last night. Tyler's stomach dropped, so someone had seen them. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. What do you want? He repeated, his voice steady but cold. Mason shrugged, his smirk never wavering. I want a few things, actually. First, I want to make the starting lineup. You're the quarterback. You've got the influence. Make it happen." Tyler stared at him, disbelief flashing across his face. "You're blackmailing me for a spot on the team?" "Why not?" Mason said, raising an eyebrow. "It's not like you have much of a choice. Do what I say, or I'll make sure everyone knows what you and Coach Daniels have been up to. Think about how fast that little golden boy reputation of yours would crumble." Tyler's fist tightened at his sides. He wanted to punch Mason, to wipe that smug grin off his face, but he knew Mason wasn't bluffing. If a word got out, it wouldn't just ruin Tyler's reputation, it would destroy Daniel's career. He couldn't let that happen. "Fine," Tyler said through gritted teeth. "You'll get your spot, but this ends here. You don't breathe a word about this to anyone." Mason's grin widened. "Smart choice, Cooper. See? That wasn't so hard." He turned to leave but paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "Oh, and one more thing. If I don't see results by next week, I might have to revisit our little arrangement." As Mason disappeared into the darkness, Tyler leaned against one of the beams, his heart pounding. He felt trapped, cornered by a secret that had spiraled out of control. For the first time, he questioned whether the risk of being with Daniels was worth it. But deep down, he knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. The cliffhanger. As Tyler walked back to his car, his phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from Daniels. "We need to talk. Tonight. Same place." The locker room was quiet and dimly lit as Tyler arrived for the late-night meeting. The faint hum of the overhead lights buzzed in the silence, amplifying the tension that churned in his chest. He hadn't been able to think straight since his encounter with Mason. Now, he was about to face Coach Daniels, the man at the center of everything. The man Tyler couldn't seem to stay away from despite the chaos surrounding them. Daniels was already there, pacing back and forth near the benches. His usually composed demeanor was replaced by visible anxiety. When he saw Tyler enter, he stopped and took a deep breath. "Tyler," he began, his voice low but firm. "We need to figure this out. Whatever happened today, it's clear this is getting out of hand." Tyler leaned against a locker, crossing his arms. "You think I don't know that?" He shot back, his frustration boiling over. "One of my teammates saw us, Coach. Mason. And he's already using it against me. He wants me to get him on the starting lineup, or he's going to tell everyone." Daniels froze, his eyes narrowing. "Mason? He's blackmailing you?" His voice was tinged with anger, his protective instincts flaring. "I'll deal with him. He won't get away with this." Tyler shook his head. "No, you won't. If you confront him, it'll only make things worse. He's got leverage on us, and he's not afraid to use it." He hesitated before adding, "Besides, it's not just about me. If this gets out, it's your career on the line, too." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on both of them. Daniel sat down on the bench, his head in his hands. "I never wanted this to happen," he said quietly. "I thought I could keep my feelings in check. But then you made it impossible." Tyler softened at the vulnerability in Daniel's voice. He moved closer, sitting down beside him. "It's not just you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been wanting this too, for weeks, maybe longer." He hesitated before adding, "But we need to be smarter about this. No more risks." Daniels looked up at him, his dark eyes filled with a mix of guilt and longing. "Maybe we should stop," he said, though the words seemed to pain him. Maybe this was a mistake. Tyler's jaw tightened. He reached out, placing a hand on Daniels' arm. "Don't say that," he said firmly. "You know this isn't just some mistake. What we have, it's real. And I'm not letting Mason or anyone else take that away from us." Daniel searched Tyler's face, and for a moment the tension between them eased. But the reality of their situation loomed large. "We need a plan," Daniel said finally. "If Mason wants to play games, we'll have to outsmart him. But we have to be careful. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart." Tyler nodded, determination hardening his features. "I'll handle Mason," he said. "He thinks he has the upper hand, but I won't let him control me. I'll find a way to shut him down." The coach hesitated, clearly torn. "Just be careful," he said softly. "I can't lose you, Tyler. Not like this." The vulnerability in Daniel's voice struck a chord in Tyler, and he found himself leaning in, their foreheads almost touching. "You won't lose me," he murmured. "I promise." The cliffhanger. As they sat there, their quiet moment was interrupted by a loud knock on the locker room door. Both men froze, their eyes darting toward the sound. "Who's there?" Daniels called out, his voice steady despite the tension. There was no response, only the sound of retreating footsteps echoing down the hallway. Daniels and Tyler exchanged a tense glance, their breath catching as the sound of footsteps faded into the distance. Whoever had knocked on the door had chosen to leave just as abruptly as they'd arrived. Tyler's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. "Do you think it was him?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Daniel shook his head, standing up and moving toward the door. "Stay here," he commanded, his tone firm but cautious. Tyler watched as the coach opened the door, peering out into the empty hallway. After a moment, Daniel stepped back inside, locking the door behind him. "No one's there," he said, but his expression remained tense. "We can't keep doing this, Tyler. It's too dangerous." Tyler stood, frustration bubbling to the surface. "We can't just stop," he argued. "Not because of some stupid threats. I'll deal with Mason and we'll be more careful. But I'm not walking away from this. From you." Daniels hesitated, clearly torn. He wanted to believe Tyler's confidence, but the risks were undeniable. "If this blows up, it won't just be you getting hurt," he said. "You know that, right? I could lose everything." "I know," Tyler said, quietly stepping closer. "But we're in this together. We'll figure it out." The cliffhanger. Before Daniels could respond, Tyler's phone buzzed with another text. He glanced down, his stomach dropping as he read the message. "I saw you tonight. This isn't over." The text on Tyler's screen felt like a punch to the gut. His fingers tightened around his phone as his eyes darted back to Daniel's. "It's him," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "Mason. He's not backing down." Daniels exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "We need to get ahead of this," he said, pacing the locker room floor. "If he's threatening you now, it's only a matter of time before he tries to make good on those threats." Tyler sat on the bench, his jaw clenched. What does he even want? He's already blackmailing me for a spot on the team. What else can I give him? Daniels paused, his expression darkening. "Control," he said after a moment. "It's not just about the lineup. He wants to feel like he has power over you. And as long as he thinks he has leverage, he'll keep pushing." The words hit Tyler harder than he expected. Mason's smug grin and manipulative tone replayed in his mind, fueling his anger. "I'm not letting him win," Tyler said firmly. If he wants to play games, I'll play too, but on my terms. Daniels looked at him, a flicker of worry in his eyes. Just be careful, he warned. Mason's not stupid. He's already proven he's willing to go to extremes. The cliffhanger. Tyler's phone buzzed again, and this time a picture accompanied the message. It was a blurry shot of him and Daniels in the locker room, their faces unmistakable. The caption read, "You have 24 hours to make it worth my while, or this goes public." Tyler stared at the image on his phone, his heart sinking. The photo wasn't perfectly clear, but it was incriminating enough. Anyone who saw it would connect the dots. His mind raced with questions. How did Mason get this picture? Was he watching us the whole time? He glanced up at Daniels, who was studying Tyler's expression with growing concern. "What is it?" Daniels asked, his voice steady but urgent. Tyler hesitated, then handed over the phone. Daniels' face darkened as he read the message. "Damn it," he muttered, pacing again. "This kid's more dangerous than I thought." "What do we do?" Tyler asked, his voice cracking despite his efforts to stay calm. "If he posts this, it's over for both of us." Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face Tyler, his jaw set. "We don't give him what he wants," he said firmly. "If we give in now, he'll keep coming back for more. We need to figure out how to turn this around." Tyler nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. Mason had them cornered, and it felt like there was no way out. "What if we call his bluff?" Tyler suggested. "What if we make him think we're not scared?" Daniels frowned, considering the idea. "It's risky," he admitted, "but it might be our only option. If we can convince him he has nothing to gain, he might back off." The plan took shape quickly. Tyler would confront Mason the next day, armed with confidence and defiance. If Mason thought his threats were falling on deaf ears, he might hesitate to go through with them. It was a gamble, but it was better than sitting and waiting for the inevitable. The cliffhanger. As Tyler prepared to leave, his phone buzzed once more. This time, the message was different. "You think you're smart, but I've got more where that came from." Tick-tock. Tyler's blood ran cold. Mason wasn't bluffing. He was escalating. The message rattled Tyler more than he wanted to admit. He spent the day scanning every face, wondering who else could have seen him and Daniels. By evening, the paranoia was suffocating. Meeting Daniels after practice, Tyler explained the new threat. Daniels' jaw tightened, his protective instincts flaring. "This isn't just about blackmail anymore," Daniels said. "Someone's targeting us. We need to figure out who." Tyler agreed, but the unease lingered. If Mason wasn't the one behind this, then who else was watching? And what did they want? The cliffhanger. A shadow moved in the bleachers above them, too quick to identify. Someone was listening. Tyler began retracing his steps, trying to piece together who might have seen him with Daniels. His focus narrowed on a handful of people: teammates, faculty, and even random students who might have noticed something. Meanwhile, Daniels stayed distant during practice, keeping his usual strict demeanor to avoid suspicion. But the tension between them was palpable. The cliffhanger. A note appeared in Tyler's locker that evening. It read, "Time's almost up." The next morning, Tyler's worst fears were realized. Pictures of him and Daniels had been anonymously posted on social media. The captions were vague but damning enough to spark rumors throughout the school. Tyler's phone exploded with messages, and Daniels received a call from the administration. The damage was done. The cliffhanger. Tyler looked at Daniels in desperation. "What do we do now?" he asked. Daniel's expression was grim. We survive. Daniels was suspended immediately, pending an investigation. Tyler, overwhelmed by shame and guilt, decided to leave town, unable to face the whispers and judgment of his peers. Before he left, Daniels met him one last time. "This isn't the end for you," he told Tyler, his voice steady despite the heartbreak in his eyes. "You'll move on. You'll be okay." The story ends with Tyler driving away, his future uncertain, but his resolve growing. The road ahead was long, but it was his to reclaim. This story makes us reflect on the risks and consequences of secret relationships in complicated circumstances. Tyler and Daniel shared an intense and forbidden connection, but it was fraught with challenges and difficult choices. Love sometimes emerges in the most unexpected moments, but the fear of judgment can turn something beautiful into an unbearable burden. Social pressure, prejudice, and the consequences of our actions are themes that make us question, how far are we willing to go to fight for something we love? The ending, though painful, shows that the choices we make, even amidst chaos, shape us and open paths for new beginnings. Tyler and Daniels may have been separated, but their experiences left an indelible mark, offering lessons about resilience and self-acceptance. What did you think of this story? Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. Be honest. We want to hear your opinion. Did you like the ending? Would you change anything? If you have a unique or emotional story to share, send us an email. Your story could become a video on our channel. We'd love to tell it to the world. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And of course, we're waiting for your rating.